So, Rich, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule this week to come and chat to me today for Estate Agency Leaders podcast. For those people who don't know you, would you be able to give us just a bit of an insight into yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm delighted to return in the favour. We're doing some stuff together from a marketing perspective, so been delighted to be returning the favour. So I've been COO at Zoopla now for a couple of years. I kind of arrived into the group via way of acquisition. So a business called RVU, who shares exactly the same ownership, acquired a business that I founded back in 2018 called Mojo Mortgages. Mojo was an online mortgage broker, and it scaled unbelievably over the course of the early 20s, and was very fortunate to exit that business at the end of 2021. So it was an online mortgage broker, primarily doing kind of remortgage and the like. And that business went off to RVU, for which I spent a couple of years after the acquisition. And then I was asked to take a look at the Zoopla business and whether I could help out. And a couple of months of spending some time with the team, and I was delighted to be offered the role. So now in post for a couple of years and really enjoying it.
So Mojo Mortgages, 2018. What were you doing before that? What was your sort of journey into becoming a sort of self-employed entrepreneur?
Yeah, I mean, always been an entrepreneur, really. I mean, in the sense that I always believe the best opportunity to kind of create value, create great consumer proposition, was to kind of be working for myself. I think that came from my upbringing, if I'm honest. My granddad was a fish and chip shop owner. My dad was a hairdresser. And they could have been any roles, they could have been in any industries. I think they were just more intent on the idea that they'd work for themselves and they'd be in control of their own destiny. And so I was kind of brought up with that mentality. And so I actually set my first business up when I was 21. It was a car finance business. I'd had a fleeting experience working in with another business doing car finance. And I was pretty sure I could do it for myself. An unnecessary degree of confidence at that age, if I'm completely honest. And so set up a business in when I was 21. I'm going to show my age now. Financial crisis hit about 3 months after I set that business up, and it was a torrid 12 months. But in that first 12 months, and due to the nature of the market, 2009, I learned that you got to pivot, you got to be nimble, you've got to be flexible. And it was an incredible learning curve. And over the course of kind of 2-3 years, I kind of developed and molded that first business that I set up into doing a variety of different things around financial services. And for a decade, that went really, really well. I built up a contact center. It was kind of a digital first business. So we did all of our own online acquisition. And we did a variety of different financial products, insurance, mortgages, second charge loans. We even did some kind of IVA referrals and debt management. And obviously at the time, there was lots of consumers struggling from a financial perspective. So it was another kind of string to our bow and an opportunity to kind of expand the business and offer back to consumer. That went really, really well. And I ended up selling parts of that business. There was a client base that we built up, which we sold on. And then I was kind of a little bit unsure what to do, if I'm honest. And I wanted to do something a bit more impactful, something that maybe could allow me to be a bit more creative. And I was obsessed with technology, obsessed with digital, obsessed with innovation, and decided to kind of really double down in mortgages, mainly because we saw it as just this huge opportunity. It was a problem that felt broken. Nobody had really done much solving in that space. And so obviously founded the Mojo Mortgages business. And then that was a really, really quick trajectory. We raised money probably a year after founding that business. We raised kind of 10-11 million pounds and started to really scale the business, and was very, very quickly acquired. And we were actually nearly acquired only 6-7 months after we started the business. So we clearly felt that we were onto something, that we were solving a problem. And the main reason was because we'd been very focused on acquisition and where we acquire customers from, and how we kind of solve that journey of a consumer finding the best mortgage for them. And immediately price comparison websites were like, oh, we need that because at the moment our tables aren't necessarily doing the job that we'd like them to. And so, it was a pretty quick journey to an exit. And then I found myself in RVU, the acquirers of that business, who, as I said earlier, they kind of share ownership with Zoopla. I wasn't really sure how long I'd stay about. As I said, I'd been working for myself pretty much my entire career, and had no idea how I would survive, I suppose, in a more corporate environment. And I would say that feeling was still real. Probably 6 months in, I was still feeling quite like a fish out of water. And then it kind of clicked for me, and I really started enjoying the environment I was in, and I was being led by an incredible leader, Tarek at the time, who leads the RVU business. He really trusted me, believed in me, and gave me a lot of responsibility to kind of keep driving the mortgage strategy forward across the group. And I absolutely loved it. And so kind of found myself 2 years later still there, and being presented with a slightly different opportunity to go and spend some time with the amazing folk at Zoopla. And then the last 2 years have been, I don't know, crazy. Like I didn't understand quite the scale and complexity of our sector, and specifically property portals, and the dynamic that exists, and the value that they've got to drive back for customers, and that balance between consumer and customer, which is really complicated. But I've absolutely loved it. It's an incredible business with some really, really smart people. Very fortunate to be able to learn from lots of people that really, really get this industry.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So let me take you right back to the financial crisis, because I'm really interested in that. I actually set up my first self-employed business on the 1st of October 2008.
We're similar then, I think.
So, we knew what we were getting into at that point, because Northern Rock had just collapsed, Lehman Brothers had just gone down, and it was actually because there was a financial crisis that we had the opportunity to pick up the bones of a countrywide business at that point, and then take that on and make that our own. So I do think that actually, in times of adversity, you can often swim in the opposite direction to the crowd, and there's a huge amount of opportunity which exists there. And so how did you pivot that business? You mentioned that you sort of went in with with financing. What did you pivot it to?
Yeah, I think I just pivoted to a business that could pivot wherever it needed to pivot, if I'm completely honest. And I'm not going to stake claim that we did that kind of like with a real strategic foresight, because I don't think we did. I just think at the time I was desperate to survive. Like I just started a business. I told everybody I was starting a business. Like I said, I was very young, 21, and I'm a winner.
Yeah.
I can't think many things that I've not won out at in my life, and the way in which I win has changed a lot. But the idea of winning is something that's kind of innate to me. I'm definitely a competitive person, and really enjoy and thrive in competitive environments. Yeah. And I think that just forged a business model that protected against the downside of risk, I think. And obviously working in financial services and kind of embracing a regulated environment as well. I still remember putting my FSA application, it was FSA, it's FCA now, application in it. I think I started writing it in my 20, when I was 20, and thinking they're just going to laugh me out the room, right, writing this application. Some young kid, but got through. And
were you directly authorised?
Yeah, I was directly authorised, yeah. I had no idea why I went down that road at the time. Again, I just think control of my own destiny, wanting to devise my own process, wanted to devise my own kind of way of working. And so, yeah, we, kind of flabbergasting, but, embraced that kind of regulated environment, and kind of, again, lent on that as something that could create an advantage for the business, especially at a time where I think, certainly around financial services, there wasn't as much rigor around quality and message and advertising, and so we kind of really embraced that. But no, I would say we created a business that, if car finance was quiet, well then life insurance wasn't, or and we were able to just flex. And we created various different brands and kind of websites and online journeys that meant, we just moved the marketing budget from place to place. We all, learned taught ourselves PPC and how to kind of design or build web pages, and it was great fun. It was a brilliant decade, despite the fact that it should have been a horrific one. And ended up running a reasonably successful business throughout that time as well.
I mean, one of the things which I think most self-employed entrepreneurs feel is that often the early days, when it was a bit chaotic, when you were learning on the job, it maybe wasn't your most financially successful period, but it was a tremendous amount of fun because of the uncertainty and the risk and the thrill of it all, and especially in your early 20s. And one of the observations you made is that, that consistent theme of being a winner in terms of your self-image, I think of myself as a winner, has changed as you've matured and got older, and the way that you win now is different to the way that you won in your 20s. How would you sort of explain that?
Well, I can explain it really clearly. We rolled out a new set of behaviours at Zoopla last year, and one of our behaviours is win together. And I think that nails it perfectly. I think I probably had a bigger ego as a younger person, probably a bit more aggressive in nature, and over time you mellow, right? You have kids or you life experiences or whatever it is, and it teaches you patience. It teaches you really critically that winning is impossible on your own. And winning with a team feels much, much better than winning on your own in the odd instance that you do win on your own. And so I think over that kind of 20-year career, I think that was the biggest thing I learned, that there's nothing better than winning together. And so we rolled it out in Zoopla for lots of different reasons. One, because we were really on a journey to bringing customers back into the heart of our business and making sure that, if we're winning, they've got to be winning. But also as colleagues, we had, it was well publicised that kind of the Houseful Group was a collection of businesses, and we decided a couple of years ago, or maybe 12, 18 months ago, to kind of separate those businesses back out and run them independently. And with that came our ability to reintegrate our commercial teams and our people teams and our finance teams. And so there was a nature of us winning together as a collective, as a unified business with one focus, a real focus on how do we help customers win and really drive value and ROI to customers, but also to kind of bring customers closer to the fold as well. We spoke about that balance on marketplaces and consumer versus customer, which we maybe didn't have quite right. I don't think the balance. And so winning together was about that as well,
The last thing which I just want to touch on from what you've told me so far is that transition from going from being a master of your own destiny, albeit presumably in a VC/PE-backed business at Mojo, to then going into a full corporate, whether it was an earn-out or whether it was just, I'm going to take this job and work with them for a period of time. And you thought, as an entrepreneur who'd been the master of your own destiny up to that point, that you might struggle with that, but you've loved it. What surprised you about going to work as part of a bigger team and a bigger business?
Yeah, I'll answer the bit I loved first, which was that my rate of learning accelerated.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty obsessed with learning about me, about my influence on others, and how to be a great leader. And after about 6 months, I actually felt, and I wish I'd done this earlier, or I wish I'd tried, working in some slightly larger organizations or different types of organizations prior to setting up a business, or you got there's no point, I don't have any regrets, but I really was enjoying this kind of world of just testing myself in different environments with really, really high quality people around me, and I was learning loads. And I think that was the big thing for me, that made me think, I'd like to stay and continue with this journey a little bit longer, and really test myself in this environment. And maybe back to that competitive piece, I think there was a few more kind of people for me to almost level set against and say, where am I? And I say that not, I wouldn't say like I'm outwardly competitive.
Sure.
I put a lot of pressure on myself. So quite inwardly competitive in the sense that I want to level peg and then say, okay, right, what can I learn from them? How can I become a more complete leader as a result of my interactions with them, and keep pushing myself? So when I say competition, I think it's probably a core value of mine, but in the sense that with myself rather than anybody else. Whereas when I was younger, maybe I'd be competitive with other people, which wasn't that helpful, I think, in terms of my own self-development.
Yeah, I mean, this was sort of brought home to me when I sort of got relatively competitive in triathlon at one point in time. Whereas, at first I was sort of measuring myself against other people. And after a period of time, of course, you just realise that there's always someone faster than you. There's always people better than you. The truth is that the battle is to keep getting better. And one of the things I think about being an SME business owner, I've been a member of the Property Academy, which is now Leaders Inc., Peter Knight's organisation, for 10 years. I got my 10-year membership.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Peter. In the sense that I'd be paying subscriptions, but it's fantastic value for money. And the reason I mention it is that up to that point, once I'd left the corporate environment, set up my own business, I think I atrophied a bit for a bit, because as you say, there weren't as many people. People were looking to me for leadership. And actually, where was I learning from? I'd stopped reading. I wasn't reading as much as I used to. And so I joined the Property Academy and then hanging out with people like Peter, they inspired me to start reading again, to learn from other business leaders who are in similar positions. So I think it can be one of the great things about the community of agents, which either, the events that Zoopla provide or the Property Academy provide, it can be amazing as places to learn. So if people don't engage in those, I would definitely encourage them to, because the thing is, you can learn from everyone. You can be better at 8 things than another person, but I guarantee there's one thing that they can do better than you, and you can learn that and go, thank you very much. Right, I'm now going to make myself just that bit better. Okay, well, listen, let's move on to Zoopla then, and let's move on to the role and the vision of the business. So one of the comments that you've made is about this idea of basically serving 2 masters, and you didn't describe it like that, but let's think about it in those terms. You've got your fee-paying agent customers, and you've got the consumers. And if you don't serve both of them incredibly well, you actually don't serve the other one, if that makes sense. Certainly, if you don't serve the consumers incredibly well, you're not actually delivering value for money for the agents. I remember as an agent sitting through meetings with, the dominant property portal, who shall remain nameless, and them telling me absolutely clearly that I was not their customer, and that actually it was the consumer, that basically their job was to exclusively focus on the consumer, and then by virtue, that justified the money that I was paying them. Yeah. And to a certain extent, that's true, isn't it? To a certain extent, that's the value that they create. But
I disagree.
But it never sat.
We'll get to it.
But it never sat particularly comfortably.
Yeah, I bet it didn't.
It didn't. Especially as the prices were going up by like 10, 15, 20% each year. So, how do you position yourself differently between those sort of 2 core audiences?
Yeah, well, agents are our customer.
Yeah.
And we're a marketing business, and our job is to deliver ROI for our customer base.
Yeah.
And that's the heart of our business. And it is a really challenging dichotomy, and it's a complex balance, but I think it's very, very important that we recognize who we are serving.
Yeah, sure, because one person.
Yeah, absolutely. That obviously means we have to sometimes have tough conversations with customers to say, we want to try this with consumers because we think it's going to drive more value for you. Let us test, let us learn, let us experience this stuff, and we'll report back. But we have to do it as a partner. Yeah. And one of the phrases I use all the time in the business, and have done pretty much since I arrived, was, we've got to be a really great marketing partner for our customers, because they're amazing at marketing properties and expert knowledge and local area knowledge. And, almost every agent I meet, incredible rapport builders. And you can see immediately the talent and the skill that they have. We have this breadth and depth of knowledge of technology, data, obviously digital marketing, brand marketing, and we also have the economies of scale, right? So we are able to do it nationally, which means we should be able to deliver a more efficient marketing funnel to our customer base. Yeah. That's the premise, right? But it's a little bit like going to a marketing agency and then saying, I want to spend £50,000 a month with you, and you're probably going to take 15, 20% of that to manage my entire marketing budget, and then turn around and going, great, thank you very much. Oh, and by the way, our customers, the consumers that see your website, well, they're not, are they? We are there to effectively deploy marketing budget on behalf of our customer base and do it in the most efficient way that we possibly can. And that's what we're really busy doing. We are continuing to invest in our brand, as you'll have seen. We're increasing our marketing spend year over year at the moment. We're very, very active on brand. It's hard to know exactly where we are in the level peg, but we charge significantly less than some of our competitors, and we're not spending any less than them on brand or pushing hard on the marketing channels to make sure that our customers are seeing value. And that will continue to be at the heart of our business. And then obviously we're investing heavily in the product experience and how we engage those consumers on behalf of our customers, so that we can drive not only volume of leads but quality of leads, which is the thing that we hear time and time again. And then start to bring more innovative things. It's not just, can't just be about leads. Agents care about their brand more and more now. They care about kind of dominance in a local territory. They care about having the right data and insight and knowledge, where to canvas next, or to be able to go into the living room with a pocket full of great insight and data about what demand there is in the area. And we can help with all of that, right? Because we aggregate such a huge volume of data across our platform. And I don't even think we've scratched the surface on the value that we can bring to agents. I'm so sure there's so much more to come.
Totally. And as you say, we're specialists in relationship building, we're specialists in local knowledge, but we're not experts in general at digital marketing and those facets of the business. And it's one of the challenging things I think about being an SME business owner is actually you're sort of expected to be an expert in all of these different areas. So finding great partners is really important. There are obviously 3 major portals, aren't there, in the UK? And agents have broadly got a choice of, should I be on 2? Should I be on 3? Should I just be on 1? I know you're biased, but how, if you're an agent out there, how do you weigh up the pros and cons of each individual portal? And what's the positioning of Zoopla in that space?
Yeah, I mean, it was a question I asked when I first arrived, right? How do you find that balance? And look, if they've got distinct proposition and you think that they have unique audiences, then there's probably value in that. We're confident we have a large unique audience. Somewhere between 25 and 30% of our audience on Zoopla is not frequenting.
Unique to
us,
right.
Not going anywhere else.
Okay.
So that's one part. But as well, we often we've been investing very hard in generating different lead types as well. So we want to be famous for vendor. We want to be able to help drive estate agents' pipeline of business. Yes. And we like it for 2 reasons. One, agents really value it because it's where their new business comes from. And I'm talking about both homeowners here and landlords, which is a big area that we're focused on at the moment. But 2, and the thing I really love about it, is we can see whether those homes came to market or not.
Yep.
And so we can keep ourselves honest, right? We can really measure that funnel and say, are we delivering ROI? Are the consumers that we're putting in the hands of our customers coming to market? Because if they're not, well, then the lead number's a vanity metric. Yeah. But if they are, well, then we can explain that. And it's on us to explain that back to the agent. We've delivered this. This is how many people have come to market. You won it or you didn't win it. If you didn't win it, here's who won it. Yeah. And be able to, again, partner with them and kind of explain, like, this is where the volume's coming from. This is where we're seeing high intent. We've done an amazing job of that. I have to say, I'm so proud of the team. There's 5.5 million people now tracking the value of their home on Zoopla. We added 200,000 new trackers last month, 1 month alone. So we're not slowing down in that growth. We're accelerating now into 2026. And with that comes an incredible knowledge of who's moving in the market. And then we're able to analyze the data and the interactions that those consumers have on Zoopla and start to target those individuals who are more likely to move and look to try and get them in the hands of agents. That's what we did when we launched Prospect Plus last year, which is a new kind of vendor product that we've launched. And that's been hugely successful. So the quality of those leads is super, super high.
So let me just try and get myself into a Zoopla meeting where you're looking at your valuation tools and you're looking then at the number which come on the market. What sort of things do you try or do you experiment with to try and improve that funnel? Because presumably, in very simplistic terms, you're trying to get more people who start at the top to actually enter the market with one of the agents that you send that lead to. What sort of things would you do to try and improve that?
So obviously the great success we've had is giving consumers the ability to track the value of their property. And it's a little bit like, I'm sure many of the listeners will maybe track their credit score on ClearScore or something like that, right? Now, your property value is actually more interesting than your credit report, especially when it's going up. And so we found great traction with that. And we really were ahead of the market on that as well. We've led the market on that part of the proposition. And now 67% of the UK think of Zoopla first when they think of valuation. And we know valuation is a critical top of funnel for our partners, for our agents. And so it's a no-brainer for us to invest there. agents are giving their hard-earned cash to us to advertise property, but they're also looking to expand the opportunity to drive volume into their funnel as well. So consumers are tracking the value of their property, and then we've teased things like, do you want to understand the demand for your home? If you're thinking about selling, which was a hugely successful feature that we launched last year. Almost embarrassed to admit that when we launched demand, it crashed a part of the website. It got that much engagement on the first send that we sent out. So elements of our My Home proposition actually crashed because of the volume of consumers that jumped onto that page. But great, right? We knew we were onto something. Exactly. And we want to move fast. We want to be a nimble business. We're not a publicly traded business. We should be able to move fast and experiment so we can deliver more value for our customers. And so, we embrace these challenges that we've had, and so demand was hugely successful, and we're market insight. Consumers love market insight. What's selling in my area? How long did it take to sell? Those types of things.
So, do you have any evidence then that providing consumers with those additional bits of information beyond just the estimated value of the property is actually accelerating their path to market?
Not yet. What we are able to do is understand, based upon the user's interaction with the website, who's high intent. Yep. And only at that point do we then introduce an agent funnel. Gotcha. Or an agent journey, or an agent lead form, whatever you want to call it. And so the goal initially has been, how do we use all those interactions to understand the intent, the desire, the demand of the consumer, and then introduce them to an agent when the time is right, rather than anybody just go and get a valuation. And so as we started to grow valuation leads, which would, that's growing exponentially as well. We're going to double our valuation leads year over year. We're doing so with the right audience, which is really, really important. So every home that comes to market in the UK, 1 in 3 is tracking their value on Zoopla. So 1 in 3 homes that comes to market anywhere in the UK is tracking their value on Zoopla. And there's no regional dominance there. So whether you're in Manchester, whether you're in Liverpool, whether you're in Leeds, we have strong distribution of claimed homeowners all up and down the country. And we're able to see them claiming their home, visiting the website, doing various different things, and then going on to list, either with a customer of ours or not, as the case may be. And that feedback loop is incredibly powerful for us to start, growing that audience, improving the quality, and then introducing them to one of our customers.
So let me ask a question. If I'm an agent and I receive a valuation lead, what's the most important thing for me to do with it? Is it speed? Is it the speed of response? Is that like the overarching factor that basically, and is there a sweet spot in terms of like, literally 10 seconds is better than 30 seconds, is better than a minute, is better than an hour, and better than a day?
I think speed is really important, but it's not the only thing, right? I mean, obviously speed's critical to conversion rate, but the quality of the service is going to be the most paramount thing in any conversion. And there's lots of things that go into that. And you and I have spoken tons about fees and, some agents feeling that they can only win on a competitive fee level, which I think certainly some of the customers that you're working with on new dynamic fee models would suggest different. I think we're starting to see some proof of that. And Zoopla are super excited to share some of your learnings in the coming weeks as part of a masterclass course that we're working on. But speed is definitely a thing. I mean, I was sat at one of our property pitches last year at the cricket ground in London, and I was sat with an agent, and he said to me, "Oh, hang on a second, I've just had one of your valuation leads come through," and he picks his phone out and he's texting this customer on WhatsApp. "Oh, we can come and see it the weekend." And they got an immediate response back, and it was fascinating for me to see. And I said, "Well, how did you find the leads?" And he went, "Oh, brilliant." And look, we get mixed messages from customers. Some customers will say they're fantastic, others not. But I do think the approach to getting in touch and how you land that message is also a critical part of that. And look, it's our job as a marketing partner to deliver opportunities to our agents and our customers. And then not everybody is going to interact with those opportunities in the same way. But I definitely think speed is a critical thing, especially when there's agents out there who are literally straight out onto WhatsApp and texting them straight away.
So one of the other podcasts which I've done, which hasn't been released yet, certainly at the time of filming, is with Luke Somerset, who is part of a business called Finamply. And so a bit like Mojo, obviously very different businesses, but they take leads which come in and then they respond to them as quickly as possible. And his evidence is that a lead that is responded to in a financial services context, within a minute, they generate 65% more business in the end than if they respond in 4. So 1 minute compared to 4 minutes is 65% more value that they create, which is absolutely incredible, isn't it? And one of the things, which is a huge topic at the moment in the industry, but without a huge amount of deliverables, is AI and the impact it's going to be. There's, my good friend Mal McCallion is currently on tour, visiting every nook and cranny of the UK, promoting his AI-powered portal. And, it's clearly, a technology which has the potential to be a seismic shift in terms of how consumers interact with portals and how agents service customers. And what made me think of that at that point is that if speed is the key to lead handling, then automatic lead handling in terms of an AI text-based journey clearly could have a massive, improvement in an agent's funnel. What's your view on, AI? What's Zoopla's approach to it? I mean, Rightmove very recently, said they were going to spend X amount of £1 million on their new AI strategy. What's Zoopla's approach to this?
Yeah, I think we're thinking about it in 2 ways. How can we benefit the customer? So triaging, quality of lead, response, I think all those things are super relevant. And then obviously the other one is around how we engage the consumer. And I think there's lots of different businesses, not just property portals, right? Travel businesses also. We're all marketplaces are testing into, what should AI be on our consumer layer, on our consumer surface.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the vast majority have gone to where the biggest interactions are, i.e. the search bar. And there's also this almost constant drumbeat or rhetoric that's the bit that needs fixing.
So the actual interaction, I'm looking for a property,
search.
Somehow I need AI in there. Yeah. Certainly if you spoke to Mal, he'd tell you that's definitely what customers.
Now, I don't know about you, I'm an avid user of ChatGPT.
Sure.
Love it to bits. But when I'm doing certain types of work, I don't know about you, but I get prompt fatigue. It gets annoying. You just wish you could get a bit quicker to the point. And I think there's things that it's great for and things that it becomes quite frustrating with. Now, I've been showing various different people searching for properties on ChatGPT, and I'm being told it's better, but I'm not sure it is. And look, time will tell. Yeah. Time will tell. And I'm not saying AI is not going to be a critical part of Zoopla business. It absolutely is. I'm just not sure it's exactly in the way that it's being presented to us all right now. We've done some testing with free type text. Almost within 5 minutes of launching it in a test environment, so it was only going to a small percentage of our traffic. Yeah. We had an app store review saying, what is this? It's horrific. Why do you need to try and fix something that's not broken? And I thought it was super, super interesting. Now, we continued to run that test because we wanted to learn some stuff. And the fascinating thing about opening up search to be a bit more two-way means you get to know the consumer better. Yeah. And that's really important. So any interaction where you can know you better and you can understand your desires and what you need and what you want out of a property and those important things, I think all of those things are really, really important. But you need to find a way for them to coexist with a user experience, a website that doesn't force you into the unknown, doesn't force you into kind of an awkward interaction just to take you through that process. And I'm yet to see someone execute that well. And there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of noise. I'll tell you where we're testing. We're testing into how a consumer interacts with a property alert.
Yeah.
So users come to Zoopla as they do all other portals and probably agent websites as well, I imagine, and set up search alerts. So they'll say, I'm interested in this area, or I'm interested in this property type. Very conventional, works really, really well. They're a good hook, right? They're good at getting you back to the website and having a look at properties. They're an important look for us. But what we don't do in that interaction is ask you what you thought about them, or ask you whether any of them hit the money, or anything like that. And that's a really important interaction, right? It's an important intersect between the consumers thinking about the search and us serving something to you and asking for some feedback or some interaction. So there's one area that we're thinking about. The other area we're thinking about, and this is talked about a lot, is people's search parameters. We've all watched location. How many times does he get someone, to Phil and Kirsty get them to buy a house that wasn't in the original thing?
It's a completely different.
Yeah, and that's the wonder of estate agency, right? And that's why you're so good at what you do. Well, what's our jobs also maybe to help with that, right? Our job's to help consumers think a little bit differently about search area. So is AI well placed to recommend new searches, new saved searches, new saved filter areas?
Yeah.
So look, it's not about completely reinventing the whole user experience today, I don't think. And I think that's a really naive way to test into these types of experiences. What I think is important is, what are those critical moments in the consumer's search, and how do you make that feel more two-way, more personal, more interactive? And so you might look at our business right now and go, where's all the AI? It's there, and it's working really, really hard at the moment. And it's doing some really, really sophisticated things to help expand the consumer search experience. The second thing I'll say that's really important, I think just free type search and kind of that really narrowed down experience is going to send agents less leads and not necessarily higher quality.
And why is that?
Again, I'm scrolling. You've sold me. How many times do you think the consumer goes, oh, what's that? That's slightly on the periphery of my search experience, or what's that? Now, obviously, AI can start to serve those things back. Absolutely, it can. But I think we as portals have got to remember who our customer is. Remember, our job is to get eyeballs on our agents' listings, alongside, obviously, our vendor experience at Zoopla, which we're super, super proud of. And so I'm not going to push the team to build anything that doesn't do what we've committed to doing for our customer base.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I can imagine that over-filtering by the customer saying, I'd like a sauna and a hot tub and a swimming pool. I'd like all of these things.
And they all sound good, right?
They all sound great. Yeah, of course I would. Tick, 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 tick. But the truth is that the perfect property with all of the really important stuff might be something different. Listen, Rich, we're going to take a very quick break. And I've got a few more questions about AI, which we're going to have straight after that break, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Changing your CRM at any point, which I've done 3 times in the lifeline of our business, is a big deal, and you want to make sure that you're moving with the right partner.
When you're not used to a customizable CRM, you don't really know there's anything different. But as soon as you've got the opportunity to have something that's completely customizable to your needs, it's absolutely life-changing. As soon as you demo this system, it's blindingly obvious how different it is to most out-of-the-box CRM systems.
No longer am I sat for hours filling out spreadsheets, which is joyous, I have to say. What we've been able to do is really get under the bonnet of our business using the system.
The business benefits that you're going to get from it by moving from something which is usually out of the box and works okay to something which can be adaptable and can really help you grow your business is game changing.
Greenhouse has been 99% positive.
So before the break, we were chatting about AI and how it could possibly help to assist you in getting to know the customers better. So one of the things I was thinking about as you were talking about your valuation funnel, the fact that you've got 1 in 3 people who move in the UK tracking their value on Zoopla. One of the things which I speak to agents about all the time is that agents often get lost about the job that we're actually trying to do. And here's my argument or my belief. I don't think that many people want to sell their home. I think that the majority of people are trying to achieve something else. They're trying to get their son or daughter into the new school. They're trying to upgrade their lifestyle and move from an area which is maybe not so good into a better area. And there's a story which goes behind that, which we just try and pencil as like schools, upsizing, downsizing, like a single word, and I don't like it. So I wonder whether if people are typing in, their requirements, or they're responding maybe to a follow-up from Zoopla, you might actually start to be able to capture some of those soft facts about those customers. Is that a possibility? Do you see that being something which could happen at Zoopla's level, or do you see that being more an agent level kind of piece of data capture?
No, absolutely. absolutely. And like I said, I think there's absolutely going to be a space for the free type prompting and text and two-way conversation. I don't see it as completely overwriting the UI, the whole experience, but I see it as being more of a companion through that moving process. And obviously consumers come to Zoopla not necessarily ready to move. And one of the goals and things that we've been thinking about is kind of how do we get the UK moving and thinking about overall transaction volumes. And we know that confidence is a critical part of that journey. So I completely agree with you that the move can mean so many different things to the consumer. One thing that I think we can say in a reasonably pithy way is confidence is lacking, and kind of that certainty about what next, and is now the right time, and is the market right, and all those types of things are all things that I think we can introduce to the consumer in terms of clarity and give them some of that insight and knowledge. But yeah, absolutely. Why might you be thinking about moving? Collecting those soft facts and then evolving our experience almost in real time to be able to say, great, well, here's the next step for you. And kind of holding the consumer's hand up until a point they get to the agent, I think is absolutely something we can support with. Beyond that, less so. I think that's over to the agent to kind of do their great work. But yes, absolutely.
So, we've discussed Zoopla being a marketing partner, trying to become the sort of the provider of high quality seller-led digital leads plus property-led leads into their CRM. And as you'll know, one of the businesses I'm involved in is a CRM. So I think about AI in the context of the execution of the agent's job a huge amount. And we've chatted about it before, so I'm going to mention it again, which is around viewing booking. So, my passionate belief is that the intent of a consumer is that when they've selected a property that they like the look of, the next stage in that journey is to go and see that property for a physical inspection. Mm-hmm. That's not universally true, but I would imagine 70% plus would probably be a reasonable estimate as to how many people's intent when they click that button to say, I'd like to go and have a look, or they call the agent. What sort of options do you think there are for portals like Zoopla to be able to provide a joining of that process in terms of viewing booking?
Yeah, well, first of all, I completely agree. And to prove that I agree, in the Mojo business that I built, almost the entirety of that funnel was predicated on a consumer wanting to book an appointment with a mortgage advisor in an almost identical way. Now, were those mortgage appointments significantly more efficient and more progressive than you might have from a normal bank? Yes, absolutely. But the premise was the same. We found in our experimentation that as much of our business could be online, but the reality is when it came to actually getting that advice, the human touch was critical. They wanted to hear somebody on the other end of the phone or on the other end of that video chat saying, this is the next steps, this is what I'm going to do for you. And I think estate agents is obviously super similar with that added element of, but there's a physical asset to go and have a look around. So I completely agree. And I said something at the top of the podcast, and I'll say it again, we're not just a volume game. This is a quality game. Agents are thinking more and more about their cost to serve, right? The cost of delivering their services to customers. And the more leads that they've got to work and the more that they've got to get through means that the reality is there's probably going to be increased cost. So it's on Zoopla to, at times think about some friction, right? Think about, how can I prove to an agent that this is a higher quality lead because they've gone a little bit further beyond just sending the lead. And obviously booking an appointment, an obvious way forward. I guess the challenge is not every agent yet is in a position to be able to give us real-time availability back. And I think slightly challenging is in the viewing process is, is the home going to be available? Is the vendor going to be able to pop out? Or, so I think there's other bits and pieces in that are a bit complicated. And maybe that's why it's not been as prevalent as, say, maybe in new build, where they can say, Monday to Sunday, 9 till whatever, there's going to be a home to view and there's not going to be problems with that. They've not got a birthday party on or whatever else. So I think there's some complexity in it. I think there's maybe a halfway house to creating slightly less friction, but still doing some of that validation work to improve the quality of the lead. But we'd love to get it to a place where, where everything was all synced up and we could just hit, here you go, they're in the diary,
Yeah, totally. And that doesn't just apply to viewings, it applies to valuations, it applies to mortgage appointments. If you could then serve those leads directly, and you and I know that in that funnel, you've got lead and then you've got appointment, and the appointment number is smaller than the lead number.
It's the next stage.
So if you can go straight to appointment, you've improved the ROI for the agent. And you are right, it does need to be on a per listing basis. So it's not enough just to say this branch is available, because on each individual listing, you've got the seller's circumstances, whether the property's vacant, whether the property's occupied. If it's occupied, have we got pre-agreed times that we're allowed to book viewings? How does that then correlate with the seller's time? But ultimately, what we need to be able to serve to you, putting my CRM hat on, is we need to be able to serve to you a list of available appointments which are actually available on a per listing basis, so that then you can serve those to the customer and we can actually, we can close that loop. And I think AI is going to provide some really interesting opportunities from a CRM space, because actually we can then kick off journeys. Let's imagine that the consumer couldn't do one of the times it was available. We can then reach out to the customer, i.e. the seller, the occupier or the tenant of the property, to actually then have a conversation with them to join those two things together. And I think, agentic AI in that context, right at top of funnel, high volume, high frequency, that's where we need to be focusing our energy, because that's ultimately where humans do the worst. When we're talking about the difference between 1 minute and 4 minutes, how are we going to
make it consistent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, and land the message that you want to land, and really deliver the USPs of the business and their knowledge and all that good stuff in a consistent way. I totally agree. Whether that kind of element of the funnel is Zoopla's right to play, I'm not sure. And obviously, we're not a CRM provider. See ourselves, as I said, more as a marketing partner, but. Absolutely, we care about quality, and I think we'll always explore where we think quality can be found, so I think that's totally fair. I think where we kind of see our agentic layer as more of an opportunity for our business is connecting those dots between a low intent browser through to a high intent vendor, and there's a lot that could be a 6-week journey, that could be a 16-week journey, it could be a 600-week journey, And so where I think agentic is going to work exceptionally well for us, again, where I'm kind of more excited about it, I think the search element, agentic search, it's kind of table stakes stuff. We'll all find a way to work it out. We'll optimize it to a way that works really well for the consumer, but doesn't create less value for the customer. And it will work its way out. And the real innovation in our space will not be search, I'm afraid to say. I know a lot of people are depending upon it being, but I just don't believe it will be. Where the innovation will come is in the buying cycle, and the re-engaging the consumer and building their intent, their confidence, their clarity, their knowledge over a long period of time, and understanding and establishing when that intent is at the right point to hand off to an agent. That's where the special sauce will be. That's where we'll really kind of earn our fees, right? Because we've done a much better job of handing off a consumer that's more knowledgeable, that's more confident, that's more aware of the transaction process. And the other elements that we're interested in is that onward transaction. And I'll be really clear why. We care about the onward transaction because we think the two biggest costs that get incurred in agency is time to completion and fall through. And if we can prepare a consumer and keep that consumer prepared for a bit longer in the journey, then we've got a really good opportunity to make sure that, I want to go back to an estate agent and say, we've built a bunch of stuff for consumers with an agentic AI layer that keeps them engaged, keeps them ready, makes sure that if there's a task to do, they do it, all for the benefit of helping your time to completion and fall through rate. Agents tell us all the time, how do we get cash quicker? And how do we reduce risk? And consumers care about the same thing, right? How do I get my keys quicker? And how do I make sure it doesn't fall through? And in there's I think, like a clarity layer, some kind of layer that keeps everybody informed as to what's going on. And I think that's where we've interestingly got a right to play. And I'm certainly from a slightly more long-term perspective, thinking about that space, but very much with the agent at heart.
So how would you square that circle then? Because again, this is the interesting interplay, isn't it, between portal and CRM, where an agent is progressing their sale, making their notes, updating the chain details inside the walled CRM. How then would Zoopla play a role in keeping that consumer engaged without the knowledge of what's going on inside CRM, or does it require an integration and the sharing of that data?
Yeah, I mean, it could require sharing of data, right? And there's already precedent for this in other territories or other countries where there is good two-way sharing of information, all for the benefit of helping the transaction. But it's not just about that visibility. It's about ensuring that the customers, the consumer in our world, is well aware of any risk in the process, that's maybe well prepared for that risk, maybe mitigated some of that risk, so that when they come to list their property, it's again less likely to fall through. If there's not weed in the garden, they know about it, or whatever it might be. I always use that example because it always stuck with me from mortgage criteria days.
That's the killer.
Yeah, but
Japanese not weed.
Japanese not weed is the absolute killer. Or a granny annex. There's very few lenders that don't like granny annexes, or over an acre, or there's all sorts of different things, right? Public right of way through the back garden. All these things cause problems. That ironically that data exists somewhere, but it's not necessarily surfaced up front at the top of the transaction. And I don't think it's on the agent necessarily, but it might be on someone like Zoopla to start aggregating that information a bit better and making sure the agent's got it, making sure the consumer knows it, making sure if there's action that they could take to mitigate that risk, that they take it straight away.
Yeah, it's funny. So I've been a sort of founding member of Project 28. And I've attended all of the meetings with the banks, with the lawyers, and with the estate agents, talking about what things can be done to achieve a 28-day exchange of contracts. And it's been spearheaded by Simon Brown, Peter Knight, and the Landmark Group. And they've done a great job, I have to say, at bringing together a disparate group of people, sometimes not with totally aligned interests, but they've done a great job of stitching it together. And one of the bits of research from my own business, which I presented, was the reasons that people fall through. So we've been recording the reasons for fall through for something like, whatever it is, 12 years. And 80% of the fall throughs are buyer initiated rather than seller initiated. And the biggest percentage reason is the condition of the property. Yeah. So if you were then going to just focus in, if you could only tackle one issue to make the biggest dent in fall throughs.
Up front on that stuff.
We sort of tried this in 2007 with home information packs. And initially when home information packs were going to sort of, come to the market, there was a thing called the home condition report, and it was going to be mandatory. But they suddenly realised that there wasn't enough, and I forget what they were called. But
surveyors, basically.
Surveyors.
Yeah.
They were like surveyor light. That there basically just weren't enough of these people, and people pushed back. And in the end, they were dropped and they were made an optional piece. And it was also partly because the lenders wouldn't accept these home condition reports effectively as the survey. So therefore, double the number of surveys were going to have to be done. And there just wasn't the capacity for it. What's your view on that?
Well, it's super interesting, isn't it? But ironically, again, it's buyer initiated, as you're saying. So it's not necessarily the lender that's the problem here. It's potentially that it was just the property was maybe mispresented, not by the agent, by the consumer potentially. And so could it have been easier that we've all got smartphones now. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to be a mandatory thing. It's just that everybody's aware of what might go on in that process. And the benefit to that is explained back to the consumer. Be upfront, be clear. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day about clearly a vendor who'd parked their car right up against the wall to hide a crack or so, and it's funny. And the surveyor was like, you're not going to trick me. If a car's close to a wall, I'm going to ask them to reverse it. And there was a crack. But their point was, it wasn't a problem and it wasn't a material issue to the property. But if there is a material issue to the property, it's likely to fall through anyway. So what's the point in trying to hide it? So I think it's back to what our job is to try and educate the consumer, make sure the quality of the lead's there, that we're not creating forward risk for the agent. We want to be seen as a marketing partner, not somebody that presents risk into an agent's funnel. And so we're thinking about it from that perspective. So I like the idea of maybe some more of that upfront work. We've heard government talk a little bit about it over the course of the last few months and years. We'll see. But either way, I think there's opportunity, and it's something we're exploring, and we're certainly asking ourselves the question: could AI be a solution to some of this stuff? Could AI make these interactions, this data collection, the surfacing of the information, the aggregation of the data easier? Probably can, right? Because a lot of this property data is messy. And what a spreadsheet or a database likes is very structured data. What it doesn't like is unstructured data. But LLMs and AI, they eat that for breakfast, right? They love unstructured data. They absorb context, especially in a world where you can give this AI, really strong guardrails and use cases, and it's not going and trying to solve for everything. It's solving for one specific use case. That's when the performance is, really, really incredible.
So just for those people out there who maybe aren't as familiar with structured and unstructured data, the example of structured data you give us like a spreadsheet. So everything's in a box, it's got a column heading, it's in a prescribed format, as it might be in a CRM or a spreadsheet. And unstructured data, examples of that?
Yeah, so it might be free text, but title deeds that have been written over millennia, in different ways and different structures and different mediums and different explanations for different property problems or different rights of access, all these different things. Unstructured, if you're downloading a PDF and scanning through it and it's a similar document to another document read, but they're completely structured differently, trying to serve a similar practice, then that's unstructured. It's basically, if you can hand over a really clean spreadsheet of information, great, really easy. You don't need AI and LLMs for that. Don't let anybody tell you do. But for unstructured information, stuff that doesn't necessarily have the same response to every question, or the response comes back in a different way every time, sometimes numeric, sometimes words, all this kind of thing. That's where AI can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's really helpful clarification. Thank you for that. So as we move forward then, one of the things which I guess started, our conversation together was about this idea of how can agents improve their cash flow? How can agents drive revenue per transaction? And one of the things I was saying to you is that a lot of the coaching clients that I have, when I initially go into their businesses and I speak to them about their objectives, I don't want to say almost universally, but in general, they want to grow their business and they want to do it by growing market share.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that the number of transactions is fixed. You can influence and stretch the market a little bit.
But it's been reasonably flat, hasn't it?
That's it, reasonably flat. And therefore, for every agent that grows their market share, there's an agent whose market share shrinks.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying growing market share is a bad outcome. It's a good outcome. It's a good aspiration.
A sign of a great business, I assume.
Absolutely. But fundamentally, I think it's a much better path to profitable growth to drive revenue per listing or revenue per transaction.
Yeah. I totally agree.
Yeah. And so I think in all of the businesses, you look at how many transactions you've got and you think about whether it's ancillary services or whether it's the total amount of revenue that you're generating per customer from your core business. Those are the things to focus on. And so we sort of have had a collaboration where we've talked about flexible fees and how agents can do that. What was it which sort of, I guess, made you think that could be something which was useful from a Zoopla context?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll take my Zoopla hat off for a second and put my SME business owner hat on. Yeah. I've been self-employed for nearly 20 years, up until kind of this last 5 years. And I have ran my own P&L, checked my bank balance every day, paid the salaries, paid the VAT bill, paid HMRC, all these different things, right? And I know it's tough and it's hard, and some weeks are great and some weeks are awful. And so I've lived it, and it's not exactly the same because I've been in various different other businesses, and I've got no right to tell an estate agent how to run their business, absolutely zero right whatsoever. But I have got some experience in running a small to medium sized business and the constraints. And time again in my history of owning businesses, chasing volume has never paid off as well as chasing transaction value. And I no more so than in Mojo, where we were so focused on lending volume and transaction volume as a measure of our success. So much so that all of our KPIs and our measurements, they were always deals per day or deals per advisor, or and there came a point where we were growing our top line. We were taking market share, definitely. All the top lenders were knocking on the door. Who are you guys and what are you doing and how are you doing it? But we were having to raise cash, and we were struggling. And that was the most stressful part of that business. I should have been there having loads of fun. But we were constantly looking at the bank balance and saying, well, we're going to have to raise some more money here. We're going to have to keep investing back into the business. And there comes a point where you've got to start obsessing over income per transaction. And like, our business, the mortgage broking business, was focused on, it was fee-free, right? So it didn't charge a fee. So we didn't have that lever to pull. So we had a set number of levers that we could pull. We could go after a more affluent customer, and that helped our transaction. We could go after the cross-sell. So adding insurance has been the most obvious one for that business, and that's a huge part of the P&L now. It was 0 on the P&L, and it's now nearly probably 40% of the revenue of the business. So that shows you the kind of upside you can find in kind of transaction adjacency. But we didn't have the fee to pull. But obviously we could go and find a higher loan amount that would give us a higher commission back. So there was all sorts of different levers that business could pull. And over the course of the last 4 years in that business, they've gone from an average transaction value of maybe £700 to maybe £1,200, £1,300. And that makes a huge difference to the profitability, to the growth potential, because you can reinvest. And I think it's really paid that business back. So when I arrived at Zoopla, Alex, our commercial director, was kind of giving me, I guess, the lowdown on the industry and the market and everything that's been going on. And he kind of said, it was his idea. Like, he was like, how can we help agents who have found themselves in this, and I say this with all the respect in the world, kind of a race to the bottom on fees. So they've found their situation where everybody's found this new normal of, you keep me honest, 1%.
It depends.
Maybe even less.
Yeah, but the agents I work with, 1%.
Yeah, okay. So so despite all of their costs going up over the last 20 years, despite the fact that transactions take 67% longer to complete over the last 20 years, despite the fact that fall-throughs increased over the last 20 years, marketing's more expensive, people are more expensive, premises more expensive, and also house prices have been growing faster than inflation in a lot of territories for a long period of time. The fees have not. And actually the fees have reduced to an extent where if you reevaluated inflation included, agents earn less today than they did 20 years ago. And that just doesn't exist in many other markets. Unless you're providing a service to a supermarket or a massive business with really regimented procurement processes that are constantly squeezing you. You're trying to put a product on a shelf in Asda. That's where those unit economics are usually squeezed. That's where usually the revenue on an individual transaction is squeezed, and you have to rely on transaction volume. In the estate agency, it's a local business. In fact, it's a hyper-local business. And if you're a self-employed or you're a smaller agent or a more specialised agent, the reality is you should have a specialised fee model. You should have a fee model that works for your business, that allows you to deliver the incredible service that you deliver, which costs a lot of money because of the time spent and the energy and the emotion and the effort that goes into making sure all your customers are happy. And I'm just obsessed with this idea of how do we help agents get their fees back up. And I don't know what it was, and you'll know the history better than I do. My observation looking outside was there just came a point where there was a squeeze from either the online agents that came on, whose business models have changed. Most of those online agents aren't online agents anymore, are they? They might have online presence, but they're back to kind of local experts in markets. And the larger corporate agents, somewhere along the line, it's been, well, to compete, we have to charge less. And I think that that's not necessarily true. And I think you probably agree with me. Yeah, but we're just but at the same time, it's hard, really hard. So again, I've been there, not take Zoopla hat off. I've been there as a small business owner and felt the need to chase transaction volume, and I've flipped it to transaction value, and my business has transformed as a result.
And it's such an important point for agents to understand. Part of the dichotomy, and I've got some of the guys I work with are what I would call market share maximalists. And what they understand, and this is the argument for lower fees, bigger market share, is that boards breed boards. Because people see me selling houses, that basically generates me free leads, which I don't have to pay for, because people call me, yeah? And there is definitely truth to that, 100%. And all of the agents listening will know that. But the question is, why do people pick you rather than someone else? And the challenge is that if someone doesn't want to use you, I believe, based on the evidence, and there's lots of evidence which I'll share in the masterclasses amongst other ways that I communicate it, is that the reason they pick you is not because of fee. It's because you've listened and understood what that customer really wants, and they believe that you've got a unique plan which will help them achieve that. And when I sit down with agents and I work on a technique such as the check back, which is basically paraphrasing back to the customer exactly everything they've told you about what they want, which is why I was so interested in the soft facts piece, because this is the nub of why people pick the agent they choose. If I go back to you and say, listen, Rich, from what you've told me so far, I think that what's driving the move is that you're worried about Tom and where he's going to go to school. You believe that if you can get him into Tadcaster Grammar Catchment, that he's going to have the best start in life. And my job that you're asking me to do is to try and get him moved by the 29th of July so that we can get him into the new school. Have I understood that correctly? And if the customer at that point goes, yeah, that's perfect. That's it. Yeah, that's the job I want.
Yeah.
And when I then go to the agents in the room and say, okay, am I winning that instruction, yes or no? Everyone in the room goes, yes, you're winning that instruction. And we haven't talked about fees.
Yeah.
We know fees are, because the thing is that how many agents actually, something as simple as that.
It's back to confidence, isn't it?
Totally, yeah.
Like we've all had 3 builders or decorators or whatever come and give us a quote. Yeah. And how often have we gone with the cheapest one? I mean, so often in that world, the cheapest one was the one we were like, oh, the van looked a bit tatty, and they came in and they were mucky. Is the house going to be mucky after they do the work? And I'm generalising, but I think a lot of people think that way. Now, in the main, the vast majority of estate agents that I interact with, very professional, on point, look great, they've got great businesses, they care about their brand, all these different things. But you're right, we often buy service, don't we? And we often are willing to pay a little bit more for a service that we think will get us the outcome that we want. I guarantee you this year, on the back of some of the masterclass stuff we've done with you that we'll be rolling out for customers in the coming weeks, again, when this comes out, hopefully it's imminent, we will be saying, well, how do we now translate that into a PVR that becomes more like a pitch deck? Sure. So how do we go and say, here's my expertise in the area, and here's my knowledge, and here's how successful I've been so far, and here's the fee I charge. And by the way, it's the fee I charge because of all the things I've just been through with you. And I think your point's exactly valid. Right at the top of that, what's the pain point? So when they go in to do the pitch, we want to produce a tool and a product as part of our packages that allows agents to go, well, I already have had a quick call with them. Yep. I've worked out what their pain point is, or what their desire is, or what their goal is. And so when I come to do the pitch, I'm going to take that slide out, put that slide back in, build up a bit of a deck. So I come in with a lead on catchment or a lead on these types of things. So we're working on that right now. We're exploring relationships with data partners that are going to bring, a new dimension to the type of data and insight and information to really make that pitch feel great. And then we want to, take some of your incredible learnings around flexible fee models. And I'll be super clear, for the listeners, we wanted to work with you, not because we like the sound of the idea, but you had case studies. Yeah. You'd been into multiple different businesses and come out and said, we rolled this out, their revenue went up. We rolled this out, the revenue went up. And you were also open, in this instance, it didn't work. And here are the reasons why it didn't work. And often it might just be, the agent actually has got to stick to it, right? And has got to be really disciplined with the process and brave. Yeah. And I think it is brave. So then how do we help them take that leap? Well, let's help them win more in the living room. Let's give them extra stuff that justifies the reason for that slightly different fee model.
Yeah, Rich, music to my ears talking about a personalised presentation deck anchored on the customer's pain point, because this is the bit which agents miss. One of the stats which I give is that according to the Home Moving Trends survey, which has been done by the Property Academy, the biggest reasons that people pick the agent they choose is that they liked and trusted the agent, they felt confident in their marketing ability, and they handled similar properties to theirs. Top 3 reasons. Only 19% of people chose the agent who had the lowest fee. 19%. So the point is that they do exist. There's 19% of customers who will pick but possibly solely based on
Yeah.
price.
And sorry, and just on that, we've done a double click on the data on that. And actually, interestingly, in that lower 19%, you often see higher fall through rates.
Yeah.
You see longer time to sell. So ironically, there's also cost in that 19% that potentially exceeds winning the business.
I mean, how many times has it been that guy or that girl who you negotiate with, you screwed you down on the fee, and you've done them a deal cheaper than you've done anyone else, and then they're the massive pain? Like, it happens time and time again. And the other big learning of flexible fees is that when you charge someone, influences massively how much money you get. And there was a study done in America which basically exemplified this psychological principle called loss aversion. And so loss aversion was described by Daniel Kahneman. And basically, there was a group of smokers who had to pay $150 each. And if they successfully gave up smoking after 6 months, they'd get their $150 back and they get $450 bonus. And there was another group who they got to try and quit smoking, who didn't put any money down, but they got $750 back if they successfully gave up smoking. So this group were getting almost double the financial advantage than this group were getting. Which one did better? Well, of course, it was
the 150 up front.
The 150 up front. Because actually, when people commit something to a process, they are psychologically invested and their behaviours change.
Yeah. And look, this is why we like it, right? Because agents I totally agree. Agents will need to be brave to take the leap to do these things. It can seem scary, all these things. So another reason we think we've got a right to support here is because we can also drive a bit more vendor lead volume or a bit more instruction lead volume, right? So we want to try and pair up the here's how we would pitch with also, not here's how we would pitch, the tools for which you want to go and pitch. We don't know how to pitch that. That is the job of the agent, and we have no right to play there. We just want to give them tools that say, I want to grab this piece of data, I want to grab this piece of insight, and I want to be able to display it in a way the consumer gets. That we are good at. We get that, right? We get interaction with consumer. We'll be really good at that. And then can we support that product with some increased lead volume and quality? So the Prospect Plus product, we know that within 6 months of sending out one of our Prospect Plus leads, they instruct at 41%. So nearly 1 in 2 within a 6-month window will have instructed and their property would be listed for sale. So we know that the quality's there, and we're growing the quantity as well. So now it's the right time to say, we really want to be famous for vendor. We want to be that marketing partner that you can say at the end of each year, I got ROI from those guys. There's no doubt in my mind. And you know what? I actually spent a bit more money with them on this year because I bought some more product for them. I bought some more some vendor leads or valuation leads from them. But they've done a really good job throughout that period of showing me the ROI that I got. And there's not a debate about it. The last thing we want to be is a business where our customers are begrudgingly renewing or begrudgingly paying more money. We've got to create products that you come to me and say, Rich, I want to spend more money with you guys because you've shown me the value. And we really like that instruction journey. We think we've got a right to win there. Like I said, we're already famous for valuation, top of funnel. We're growing this incredible homeowner base, which again, we've got homeowners and we've got landlords in that base, which we're super excited about. And then it's onward journey. How do you win that business? How can we support you in winning that business? Whether that be the pitch, whether it be nurture. You've pitched in the living room. Great. Do you want your brand to now be a bit more visible on Zoopla whenever that individual consumer comes back to Zoopla? These different types of things, right? That just builds digital footprint through the funnel. And then gives the agent the confidence to maybe pitch a slightly higher fee. And then if everyone's winning, great. We're a business at the end of the day. We're clearly here to try and grow revenues and make our business more performant. But we are obsessed with this idea that we've got to win together.
Yeah. Well, and as you mentioned, that's one of those core values that you've now spelt out into the DNA of the business. So as a final thought then, if you had one piece of advice for an SME, estate agency business owner, as they go through 2026, what would it be?
Single piece of advice.
And it can't be spend more on...
I would never say that. We have to earn that. We have to earn that. Look, 2 things really. On the fee model, experiment.
Yeah.
Just experiment. It doesn't have to be with all the customers. It doesn't have to be with all of your negotiators. You could run some experiments. and see how it goes. I think that they'd be surprised potentially that actually they can still gain market share and gain customers. And you know, one of your our customers and your customers, you know, and I never forget, you know, they first year rolled out the new fee structure. And I think within 12 months, 100% up year on year on revenue growth. Hadn't necessarily done 100% more transactions, but the following year, the growth was even greater. And I asked her why. I said, why did it compound? Because we did slightly less transactions. We spent a lot more time with those customers, and word of mouth went through the roof. We all of a sudden, we were getting a lot more inbound and a lot more frequency because of the quality we were able to offer to a slightly smaller set of customers that we charged a slightly higher fee for. And actually, not a single year after rolling it out did we actually see us go backwards on fees. We went forward every year on fees. That stuck in my mind. And so I'd say, can we experiment? And the second thing I would say is to embrace AI. And I'm saying it to all of my colleagues and to anyone that I can speak to, not to be too worried about it, but to explore, to play with, to test with. No one's sure what the right solutions are today. But one thing I think we can all be sure of is that people that embrace it and, you know, aren't afraid of it. And I think the great thing about AI now and the way that it all operates is anybody can work out how to do anything because you just start by asking how. And I think that really embracing that mentality and kind of exploring what it might mean for our businesses, not necessarily having to feel like you're seeking the solution today, is going to put you in a really strong place.
I mean, just to offer some sort of context on that, I have no technical skills whatsoever, but the very first version of the flexible fees app, which we, you know, the slider which allows customers to choose how much they pay, I built entirely on Codex, which is the ChatGPT coding piece.
That's cool, mate.
And yeah, I mean, like, so someone, and I couldn't even read the code to be able to say that's right, that's wrong.
Copy and paste.
And I was like, well, okay, so you've written this code. Well, what do I do with it? And it says, well, you know, you need to, you know, set up a domain. Okay, so I went and got a domain, and then it said, okay, you need something where you can upload this code, so you need a GitHub account. And it gave me the step-by-step instructions, and before I knew it, we had a product which was a minimum viable product. You talked about experimenting. This is a key part of marketing, isn't it? It's trial and error. Yeah. And so, you know, we trialed it, it worked, so I gave it to a proper developer and said, right, this is the rough shape of it. These are the things I can't do. Off you go. So our ability now, even as business owners, to experiment and try new ideas, new things, has never been greater. And the models which are out today, the new Claude model, the new GPT models are much more capable than they were a year ago. So if you used it a year ago and you've actually found, you know what, it was a bit rubbish, it was a bit garbagey, it sounded a bit American, it's not really my tone of voice, I would just encourage people to go back and have another go, because, you know, the models are getting better and more capable. There's no doubt about it. Well, listen, Rich, I've taken up so much of your time, and I'm really grateful to you to come in and chat to me today about Zoopla, about your plans for the future. And it's been great to partner with Zoopla and work on the masterclass. I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for your time.
Cheers.